Cypher is pursued by an elite assortment of the most dreaded killers humanity has to offer. The bodyguards of the Emperor of Mankind, assassins whose forebears had even introduced a Primarch to Death's Kiss, and his own young, impetuous kindred, their hatred for Cypher and his ilk burning brighter than any of the others, no matter how slighted they had been. Beneath the Imperial Palace, the hunt continues. The greatest fugitive humanity has known, and perhaps one of its most closely guarded secrets. Cypher wishes to draw the Warden closer. He and his brothers execute over 700 souls within a communication hub, mostly messengers, but also a platoon of solar hoplites. This brings them no joy, but they know it will draw the attention of the Custodes, whose data system taps feed cogitator temples and servitor farms, monitoring all Palace Vox traffic constantly, sifting through every morsel of information that is transmitted within its walls. Ensia begins to think. What if Cypher does not wish to reunite with the Blade? She closes her eyes, and within her mind she is back in his room, within the dark cells. She can see the sword prevailing in his thoughts as he sits within his cell. What if that was a lie? Ensia can see now. She sees Cypher of the past, looking at her, smiling. He knew we would come, she says. He left the image of the sword for us to find. This was a mistake. He is going elsewhere. She accesses her scrying talents, sifting through the currents of the warp to peer into a doom-laden future. She sees a light, a sword and a figure wrapped in gold and cables. Another kneeling figure holds a broken sword, but one that will never break. Eyes opening in the face of a skull, eyes shut in a face like stone, which has not moved in 10 millennia. Images in ghostlight layer over each other within her mind's eye, the future breaking and repeating. It breaks before mending, then diverging over the same two paths again and again. This should not be happening. There should be many different paths. One single choice yet to be made cuts future events down two very different paths. The choice must be made. Their path now leads to the throne room. He means to reach the Emperor himself. The realization that all this time, even within the dark cells, Cypher was where he needed to be, dawns on the pair. They may as well have paved the way for him to the inner sanctum. He has a way in. Ensia sees an uncertain vision upon the path of martyrs. Something will occur there. Hikaron had heard enough, and sprints into the distance, boarding a golden grav tank and ordering Ensia back to the dark cells. Within the black roots of the world, the fallen have fled. There are families here, those civilians who have fled the slaughter above ground, old and young, poor and wealthy, all are equals in the darkness which prevails here. Some are scriveners, whilst others wear jingling trinkets around their necks, which could buy a planet. Behind the fallen, figures on fire run in their trail. Possessed humanity are loose, and have come searching for easy prey. Cypher knows should they press on, the families will be doomed. He cannot leave them to this fate. The crowd can see the demons draw closer, their teeth lengthening in anticipation of the feast. Some panic and flee, whilst others are rooted to the spot in fear. Cypher turns, sprinting as his twin pistols discharge into molten, cracking flesh. Hooved atrocities are swept from their feet, wailing in agony as their brief foray into real space is abruptly ended. Angels of Caliban with me, Cypher shouts to his brothers, and as one they apply skills and violence practiced during some of the darkest days of humanity against these foul creatures. In this moment they are again a noble image of humanity's protectors, as they were during the days of the Great Crusade. Beast slayers from the feudal planet of Caliban, defending the weak and the young from horrors best left a secret. The proximity to the demon and the ceaseless tumult of warp energy flowing over the planet's surface is too much for Bacariel. Once the creatures are ended and the citizens saved, the last of his mental defences are shattered, and he becomes a thing of nightmare. His soul has long been claimed by false gods, and now they have come to collect. Molten lava drips from the speaker grill of his faceplate. His armour swells and cracks. Striking down his brother Namer, the doomed Astartes turns to ash before he hits the ground. The demon who now inhabits Bacariel toys with Cypher, taunting the fallen angel as he batters his power armour with swollen, clawed fists. Corleone stabs his blade through his tainted brother, severing Bacariel's spine as the demon swells even larger. Cypher's twin pistols blow out the possessed Astartes' legs before Cypher turns his attention to the arms and then armoured mass of Bacarial's tainted form. Cypher fires until both his pistols are dry, contempt for the demon in his soul. Finally, Corleone ends his brother's tortured state, plunging his blade through his chest, upward and out, instantly banishing the demon within. Bacarial dies freed of the corruption he had carried for so long. Elsewhere in the palace, Hikaron and 2 operatives of the Officio Assassinorum speed towards the path of martyrs. Kestra, a Vindicator of the 9th degree, and Kratos of the Calidus, who is himself of the 26th degree, having mastered 40 of his temple's greater deadly arts. Kratos himself is marked to head the Calidus in due time, perhaps even becoming Grand Master one day, the representative of the Officio Assassinorum within the High Lords of Terra. Between the 3 killers, none are under any illusion that Cypher will be an easy target. Far below the palace, at the end of a road made from ancient catacombs, where fungus grows from the eye sockets of bones, and hairy creatures with dozens of legs lurk in the dark, the door to the throne room breaches on the horizon. Even this far below ground, the ceiling is hundreds of yards tall, and statues of ancient martyrs line the walkway. Hikaron stands guard over the door to the inner sanctum, a door sealed with locks and chains some 6,000 years prior. It is a long-forgotten entrance to the throne room. Normally it is guarded by the Custodes, but tonight, when the demonic rampage across Terra and the Emperor's son returns, they are needed elsewhere. A power-armoured figure approaches. Hikaron can sense its fellows' weapons trained on him beyond the veil of darkness within the colonnade. Mordecai emerges from the shadows, and both Custodian and Dark Angel realize they have been played for fools. The Deathwing Hunter team have come to this place because this is where the fallen Dark Angel, Asgar, told him he would be. Bitter, hateful Asgar. He believed this is where Cypher was headed because that is what Cypher told him. Hikaron and the assassins have come here because of the vision Ensia witnessed of Cypher within the dark cells. They all should have known better. Far below the path of martyrs, where one more bitter skirmish was about to ensue, on a world racked by war, Cypher and his brothers enter through a small, forgotten stone doorway. Mordecai makes the first move, and a pack of wolves fall upon a lone lion, whilst 2 shapes cloaked in darkness watch on. Bolters discharge, a torrent of fire directed by the greatest warriors the fabled First Legion can muster. But they fight now against a warrior whose gene crafting is an art created by the Emperor himself. Each custodian a work of perfection. Hikaron charges through the fusillade of bolt rounds and staggers as chips of auric armour give to the explosive tips. His guardian spear ends one of his attackers as its edge passes through his throat, and he is amongst them now. 3 more Dark Angels die to his spear as the Shadow Keeper's warden dances through their lines and uses the statues of ancient heroes as cover. A 4th and 5th Deathwing perish before the blood of the first to die has even hit the cold, dust-laden ground. 2 more are felled. Mordecai brings his enormous powers to bear. Telekinetic force struggles to slow the Custodian, whilst lightning racks his body. The Custodian's force of will pairs with his armour's inbuilt defences against such warp-fueled lethality. The alchemy of his making and inscribed words of power etched upon Hikaron's auric armour struggle to fend off Mordecai's psychic attack. He struggles to move at his usual demigod pace as Mordecai's invisible telekinetic bonds tie him in place. The surviving Dark Angels unleash the fury of their weapons in this time the epistolary has afforded them. Missiles and bolt rounds hammer into Hikaron, warden of the dark cells of the Shadowkeeper shield host. As Hikaron slumps against one of the statues in the colonnade, the Dark Angel survivors lock plasma grenades to each of their dead, erasing any trace of their presence before they pass through the door beyond. But why did the assassins above not intervene on behalf of the Custodian? You see, the many institutions of the Emperor are as divided as they are varied. Their target was not present, and so they did not act. The Custodian, one whose only purpose of existence is to protect the Emperor of mankind, has failed, and it is up to the agents of the Assassinorum to finish this quest alone. Upon the Bridge of Ascension, a place where only the ultimate doors separate those without from the Emperor within, the remaining Dark Angels arrive. Within the confines of the inner sanctum, an ancient knight of Caliban confronts the Unforgiven. A lone figure in dark power armor meets Mordecai within the shadows, so close to their ultimate sire's throne. He sneers at the name Fallen. "We were knights," he says. "We were the first warriors of the Imperium. We were angels. What of that remains in you?" You see, Corleone alone has strode out to meet Mordecai. Upon his back his blade is sheathed. Some may even mistake him for the Lord of the Fallen. High above the pair, Kratos awaits in shadow. He bears Cypher's ancient charge upon his back. His Vindicare compatriot Kestra is in position also. It seems their patience has provided them with opportunity at last. "Take the shot, Kestra," Kratos orders, but before she can pull the trigger, a bolt round from behind tears her arm apart. The assassin spins in the direction of the shot, expertly drawing a pistol. As she does so, she lines up an armoured target a quarter of a mile away on an elevation above her. Zorn, Cypher's brother, has been waiting for this moment, armour powered down and twin hearts barely beating, so as to escape detection. Both killers simultaneously fire. Kestra's remarkable marksmanship with just a sidearm punctures Zorn's skull, whilst the fallen angel's final round punches through the assassin's chest, exploding her into a grotesque mist of bone and gore. The exchange of fire above prompts Corleone to charge at Mordecai, whilst his brothers behind open up against the Dark Angels assembled behind the epistolary. Kratos withdraws, knowing he has lost the chance to eliminate the elusive Cypher, but as he creeps through the darkness, Cypher is waiting. A plasma shot vaporizes Kratos' head, and Cypher is once again reunited with his sword. Though Corleone bests the librarian in combat, before his blade can make the killing stroke, Mordecai sifts through Corleone's mind and utters his name, briefly wrong-footing the knight, but this is all the opening he requires. Mordecai brings up his own force blade, plunging it into Cypher's truest friend and brother, and sending his awesome will through it, reduces the noble Kaliberda knight to ash. Meanwhile, in Hekaron's dying dreamscape, a voice reaches out to him. Theta, the voice of the Court of Assassins, appears before him. "You must see," she beckons to him. The Eye of Terra appears before him, before expanding to encompass his view. A ruined city stretches out before Hekaron, a place called the Desolate City, a legend known to saints, inquisitors, and raving madmen alike. Any writings on the matter sealed away. Throughout this ruined city of bones, stone, and twisted metal, Hekaron spies what he hoped not to see. A man is sat upon a seat of stone, pale skin and hair wrap his skull, and he is dressed in ragged, purple robes. The throne itself is plain and sits atop a cracked plaza, the seat and the man themselves small compared to the stature of the custodian, but they possess an awe which fills the custodian's view. He begins to kneel before the figure, but this demigod does not know whether he does so in reverence or shock. He is in denial. Theta whispers to him that it is and shall come to be. The figure on the throne raises its hand as its lifeless skull turns to stare at Hekaron. "Please," it whispers. Hekaron and the old figure clasp fingers as the cityscape and the deathly figure disappear. He is filled with revelation. This is what the Emperor and the Imperium will become. He asks the figure of Theta whether this future is inevitable, to which it replies, "You think I can give you that answer? That I can give you the truth? Then you know who I am." "Yes," says Hekaron. This is the moment where mystery, divine intervention, and perhaps even a dying warrior's delusion meet and intertwine. "There is something you must do," says the figure who is not Theta, and relays to Hekaron the last instruction he will ever carry out, but it does not depart until revealing to him why. It lifts an arm, and as if opening a doorway, Hekaron is shown. Perhaps a warrior in black plunges his blade into a figure on a golden throne. Perhaps he sees a robed vagabond lift the sword of his father in penance, pleading. Perhaps light blazes out through the night, on and on. Perhaps he sees the stars of the night sky all fade. All this and more. He is awoken by Encia, who witnessed his vision, but claims they are not truth, merely the dreams one experiences when on the precipice of death. Hekaron rises to his feet as bone and armour fall from him. In this state he should not be able to stir, let alone stand. Encia uses her scrying ability to peer into a realm of possible futures, the Emperor dead, the Imperium in ruin, though she cannot discern one path from the other. Hekaron departs to the inner sanctum. He is headed to the Bridge of Ascension to face down his fate. Mordecai rises from the killing blow he has dealt Corleone, and with a rage that burns brightly within him, a hatred for the fallen fueling his psychic might, Mordecai conjures fire from the tip of his force blade. It doesn't just roast the fallen Astartes before him, it turns their power armor and the stone walls around them to slag. Such is the power coursing through the epistolary. As he begins to exit the chamber, the one lone surviving Dark Angel at his side, Brother Sergeant Neriel, Cypher steps from the shadows, vengeance in his heart. Before either can react, Cypher's plasma pistol evaporates Neriel's helmeted head with one well-aimed shot. Mordecai and his quarry face each other, 12 paces between them. Plead for forgiveness and you shall be granted absolution, Mordecai snarls. He intercepts Cypher's bolt rounds with chained lightning. Look into my thoughts, Cypher beckons. If you want the truth, look now. Mordecai should have known better, but curiosity gets the better of him. As he peers into the mind of Cypher, no doubt witnessing a life which contradicts all he knows. Nothing is stopping Cypher from lowering his pistol and ending the life of epistolary Mordecai. But as Cypher turns to pass beyond the end of the Great Bridge, Warden Hekaron bars his way. He is a ruin of a man. Cypher wonders if he should kill Hekaron, but then the custody speaks. I know where you are heading, and perhaps why. You cannot, states Cypher. I have something to say to you, and that you must hear. Not yet, Hekaron says. Heed what has been said, and go, or try to pass. He is a custodes, and he has one duty which matters above all others. He serves one above any other. With the weight of all this has cost, yet is left unfulfilled, Cypher turns and leaves. Death begins to flow again through the warden's body from wounds which killed him hours ago. Hekaron is finally allowed to die. Now guys, this isn't all. In the end of the book, we are privy to a conversation between two custodians named Cambyses and Drace. Apparently, Doomscryer Encia does not recall the vision she originally reported to Hekaron. The custodians discuss the possibilities. Could she have been possessed? It would take a psyker of truly immense power to influence the mind of a Doomscryer. After reviewing the security footage of Warden Hekaron, they see he let Cypher go, which is impossible if Cypher was a threat to the Emperor. A custodian is not capable of acting in a way which poses a risk to the Emperor of mankind, even if he were ordered to do so. That is, unless his actions were not against the Emperor's will. And therefore, the implications stir a silence between the two. They decide to hunt for Cypher themselves. They require answers. Now let's quickly discuss some points from the novel which pose further lore implications. I'd love to know your thoughts on these and the lore within the story, so make sure you leave a comment. The blade Cypher carries is described as being great in size, even for an Astartes. Its physical description, well, the visible part anyway, is described as this. Its pommel is pointed and hollow, made to smash through faceplate or bone, the metal scooped out to give it balance. The crossguard is an alloy of gold and adamant. Wings of red unfold across each tine behind an ivory skull. When referring to the blade being broken, Cypher states this could be rather not a physical description of the state of the blade, but could in fact allude to the two halves of the Dark Angel's legion, the fallen and the unforgiven. He states it could very well be the lion's sword, and if it was the blade of an executioner, what would that mean? This most likely refers to the fact he wishes to bring the blade to the throne room of the Emperor, leaving us to wonder whether his intention is to kill the Emperor or not, a reference he makes several times. In Encia's original vision, she sees Cypher as either an agent of ruination, of all they are born to protect, or a herald of hope. This must refer again to the references Cypher also makes about either executing the Emperor or pleading for his forgiveness. But what if it's not forgiveness for betraying the lion and his legion, but forgiveness prior to plunging the blade into the Emperor. The sword is also referred to as a key. Perhaps it unlocks a more righteous future following the Emperor's death. Cypher also points out it may not be the Lion's blade, but that of the traitor Luther, or even an unknown sibling to the Heavenfall blades, the keys which all masters and grandmasters of the Dark Angels carry. They are keys after all, so what if his blade opens a secret upon the rock the Grand Masters know nothing about? This could be the way the Lion was woken up, as, in The Lion Son of the Forest, when we begin the book, he is already awake, but confused and disoriented, so we don't know how he first awoke. Let's speak a moment of the skeletal being who Charon spoke to in his death vision. Given his moment of death was basically paused for hours until he could deliver a message from the Emperor, I would think the vision of Theta and the figure on the throne were both the Emperor. What about some story arcs left open, such as the dead Dark Angels, who would have been left for the custodians to find following the death of Mordecai? They now know the Dark Angels committed treason and were battling against the Fallen. I hope we see some more of this in the future, the custodians hunting Cypher whilst trying to discover how the Dark Angels are involved. This would really turn up the pressure on Azrael and the Inner Circle, let alone how the Lion would also interact with this. One last thing I'd like to point out is that while Cypher and his band were not only being pursued, but were also in a race against the Unforgiven and the Palace Defenders to reach the Emperor first, they stopped to save citizens from demons. This I think is huge, because even your average run-of-the-mill loyalist Astartes may not have stopped to help at this point. It shows that Cypher does at least contain some compassion for others. Make sure you stay tuned for our next videos as we discuss new lore regarding the Fallen, as well as a more in-depth look into Terra and the Imperial Palace in the 41st millennium than we've ever been privy to before. If you found this video entertaining or learnt something new, press the subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the new content next week. Also, commenting, liking and sharing has a massive impact on how the YouTube algorithm shares the video with more people. Remember, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, you can use the link in the descriptions of our videos to access up to 21% off Warhammer and hobby related items from Gap Games. A percentage of sales goes to the channel, so it's an excellent way to support us. This is definitely a labour of love, and we appreciate any support you can give us. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed yourself. Take it easy and have a good one.